Good morning, everybody. This is Imelda.
And I'm Linda. And we start with the Sight for Wight news for Friday the 16th of August 2019. On Tuesday the 20th of August, the swimming group is swimming at the waterside pool in Ryde from 8 p.m. till 8:45 p.m. The pool is closed to the public while the group swims. There are male and female volunteers to help you get in and out of the pool, as well as lifeguards to ensure your safety. To join the swimming group, please call Sight for Wight first to notify us of your swimming ability. You need to register with the office at Millbrook House first to be able to swim with the group. And on Wednesday, the 21st of August, the weekly coffee morning and low vision drop-in held at Millbrook House will not take place during August. As the same for Thursday the 22nd of August, the Thursday social group will not be meeting at Millbrook House during August.
And any other news? Raffle tickets are now available for our annual raffle, which will be drawn on the 31st of October. The tickets are £1 each and come in a book of 5 tickets. Please contact Sight for Wight on 522205 or email enquiries@iwsb.org.uk if you would like to purchase tickets. Sight for Wight is looking for donations of tumbler prizes for upcoming summer shows and also donations of raffle prizes, that is meals, car MOTs, gift tokens, etc. from businesses. If you are able to help, please contact Sight for Wight on 522205 or email admin@iwsb.org.uk. Day sailing on the Spirit of Scots Beda catamaran. This is a purpose-designed catamaran which we hope to be joining for a day's sailing around the Solent on Thursday, September the 19th. Timings are dependent on the tides, but will probably be early morning to mid-afternoon and will be confirmed closer to the date. Assuming full capacity, the cost will be £27 per person, but this may change if all spaces are not taken. Due to limited spaces available, places will be offered on a first-come, first-served basis. Closing date for applications is the 23rd of August. For further details, please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk. And there's an eye contact exhibition on the 21st, in 2019 at the Aegis Bowl in Southampton. We are considering a group trip to this expedition on Wednesday the 25th of September. Event time is 10 to 5. To gauge whether there would be sufficient interest in this trip, please register your interest by Friday the 23rd of August. Once we know possible numbers, we can finalise transport arrangements. For more details, please contact Laura Jasper on 52205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
Visit to Osborne House. Join us for a visit to Osborne House on Monday the 7th of October. Start time is 10:30 a.m. for approximately 4 to 5 hours. There is an outdoor picnic area, dependent on the weather, if you would like to bring a packed lunch. The self-service cafe sells light snacks, and the Gazelle House cake shop at Swiss Cottage serves a small selection of snacks and cold drinks. Cost for an adult is £18.50 and £16.70 for a senior citizen. Minibus transport may be available depending on location and will cost £2. Closing date for applications is Friday, 20th of September. For further details or to book your place, please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk. Please note that there will not be a West Wight coffee and chat at the end of the line Cafe Freshwater on Tuesday the 27th of August. Also, there will not be a Knighton coffee and chat at Knighton Post Office on Tuesday the 3rd of September. Save the Waverley Quiz Night. Many of you will know of the paddle steamer the Waverley, the last seagoing paddle steamer in the world. There will be a fundraising quiz and raffle for the Waverley Trust at the Waverley Inn in Carisbrooke on Thursday the 5th of September, 7:30 p.m. until 10 p.m. Teams of 4, £3 per person. Please call 522-338 to book a table. Please note, this is not raising funds for Sight for Wight, as some of you do attend our quiz which we host at the Waverley Inn a few times a year.
And this week in Touch. Where's my pizza? Why a case about a blind man who couldn't build his pizza online might end up in the US Supreme Court. Guillermo Robles took the pizza company Domino's to court because he claimed he was unable to access their website and app to order his meal of choice, using the software that reads the screen aloud to him. He also claimed he was unable to take advantage of their discounts and build his own pizza. But Domino's argues that the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA, predates the introduction of websites that were passed in 1990, and that in any case, making its website accessible would place an undue burden on the company. Guillermo lost his case, but then won an appeal in a federal court. But now Domino's Pizza says that because lower courts can't agree on the online responsibilities of companies, the US Supreme Court must provide some clarity. Court journalist Efrat Livy gives us the facts of the case, and Chris Danielson from the US National Foundation for the Blind explains why this case is so important at this particular point in time.
And now we move on to the county press for this week, that is, for Friday the 16th of August 2019. And on the front of the county press this week, there is an article about the tragedy involving a kite flyer at the West Wight who flew into a cliff and subsequently died. The family pays tribute to tragic Compton kiteboarder who died in horror cliff smash. The family of kiteboarder Tom Hutchinson have paid tribute to him and said he died doing what he loved the most in his beloved home waters. Tom died at 52 last Wednesday after sustaining fatal injuries from crashing into the cliffs while kiteboarding at Compton. His brother Riff was on the beach when the accident happened and cared for him while he was bleeding profusely and in a coma until the emergency services reached him. He was airlifted to Southampton General but died shortly afterwards. Tom was born in Bryston and spent his childhood in the West Wight. His love of the sea saw him leave school at 16 and become a deckhand on a luxury yacht in the Mediterranean. He then delivered several yachts across the Atlantic, becoming a delivery skipper at 18. He chose a niche career in yachting and specialised in rigging. He took an apprenticeship and moved to San Diego in California to run a workshop servicing yachts competing in the America's Cup. The opportunity enabled him to get to know all the international contacts associated with the America's Cup, which was established in Cowes in 1851. These contacts proved invaluable when he established his own rigging company, Future Fibres, based in London. He employed Riff and other islanders, and the company was visited by Prince Charles, who was intrigued to see manufacturing taking place within the square mile. When New Zealand won the America's Cup, Future Fibres transferred its business to Auckland to service the needs of the competing yachts. 4 years later, the whole operation transferred to Valencia, where it continued to supply America's Cup's contestants, but also produced rigging for other campaigns, such as the Volvo Ocean Race and Wally super yachts. His father Francis said, "Tom's work took him all over the world, which suited his free-spirited, charismatic personality, and he made many lifelong friends in the process. But the draw of the island was always with him, and he returned to his cliff-top cottage whenever he could to pursue his great love of kiteboarding in the back of the Wight. Tom leaves his father and brother, Mother Joanna Farmer, and Sister Francis."
Violence and self-harm up in the prison. HMP Isle of Wight's annual report showed an increase in violence and self-harm, with concerns raised about elderly and disabled prisoners. There were 65 assaults on staff in 2018, a rise of 13.5% on the previous year, and 656 incidents of self-harm, an increase of 26%. The prison has an average population of about 1,080, more than 98% of which are sex offenders. 9 deaths occurred at the prison in 2018, and 2 were suspected self-inflicted. Chair of the Independent Monitoring Board, the IMB, which produced the report, Linda Johnson said, "To improve the overall safety of residents with complex needs, a challenge, support and intervention plan was introduced towards the end of this year. This was urgently required as there was a significant increase of 26% self-harm incidents during 2018. More than half of the prisoners are over 50 years old, with 96 aged between 70 and 91. Nearly half of the prisoners assessed have some form of disability, and concerns were raised regarding their mobility. The IMB at HMP Isle of Wight also noted 8 of areas of improvement. These included increased equality meetings, improved communication with residents, and the development of one-to-one work with offenders. The report noted prisoners had been given the option to buy Christmas cards for their husbands or boyfriends which they appreciated. The cards, new to the prison, had been made available to buy in the canteen. Other complaints and concerns mentioned in the report included the lack of access to the gym and library, complaints regarding hair products for BAME prisoners, the lack of a toenail cutting service for elderly and disabled residents, the use of restraints on seriously ill residents, the need for more meaningful employment, laundry having to be washed at the wrong temperature or sent elsewhere due to lengthy laundry problems. And on the other page inside the county press, there are comments on this report. The Chief Inspector of Prisons, has called the response of prison managers not good enough following a rise in violence at HMP IW. Peter Clark, HM Chief Inspector of Prisons, said there was little support for victims of violence, even though relationships between staff and prisoners were good. He said, "We found prisoners had very poor perceptions of safety. In our survey, more than half said they had felt unsafe during their time at HMP Isle of Wight, and nearly a quarter felt unsafe at the time of the inspection. While violence was still not widespread, it had risen significantly since the previous inspection, and the response of managers was not good enough, leading to inconsistent challenge of perpetrators and little support for victims. Managers need to address the weaknesses in offender management to ensure the prison fulfills its purpose of reducing the risks these long-term prisoners pose, both within the prison and, importantly, when they are eventually released. Since the last inspection in 2015, the assessment of respect had slipped from good to reasonably good, and safety fell from reasonably good to not sufficiently good. The report also said rehabilitation and release planning was not sufficiently good in the prison. Phil Coppell, Director General of Prisons at HM Prison and Probation Service, said, "The high-quality education and training at HMP Isle of Wight are vital for helping offenders lead a productive, law-abiding life on release, but we recognise more work is needed to make the prison safer."
Now, what's in your wheelie bin? The Isle of Wight Council will be carrying out a survey this month looking at the contents of people's bins in a bid to improve recycling rates. Around 600 properties on selected streets will have their waste collected by different vans, which will then be sorted to see how much could have been recycled. The survey will take place over 2 weeks this summer, starting on Monday, then again on September the 9th. It will also check how much non-recyclable waste could have been used to create energy in the new £58 million plant at Forest Road, Newport. Information gathered will help the Council to improve waste and recycling education campaigns in the future. The island recycled 53.4% of household waste in 2017 to 18, more than the national average. Residents living on the selected streets, which are island-wide and cover a cross-section of the population, have been contacted directly by letter. The council said no personal information would be collected and the sampled bins would not be identified with individual properties. Councillor Steve Hastings, Cabinet Member for Waste Services, said, "This study isn't targeting specific people, and we assure residents taking part that all information collected will remain anonymous and any waste surveyed will not be linked to any properties." Natasha Dix, Head of Waste Services at the Council, said, "The survey will give us a snapshot of how people sort their waste and, on average, what is generated. This means that if there are certain items that appear in waste that could be recycled, it'll flag up the areas we need to concentrate our education campaigns on. For example, many people believe that food leftovers decompose naturally once sent to landfill, so place this out as waste. The reality is food waste sent to landfill rots and releases methane, a damaging greenhouse gas. Recycling it in your food waste containers every week, however, means that we can send this to be composted instead." A second phase of the survey will take place in February 2020. It will be carried out by Waste Research on behalf of the Council, working in partnership with Amy.
Glory Art Death Chat. Mountbatten will host its latest Death Chat at a glassmaker who creates memorials from the ashes of loved ones. The charity's Death Chats offer an opportunity to meet and talk with others about death and dying in a relaxed, informal and supportive setting. The event will be held at Glory Art Glass, Melville Street, Sandown, at 6 p.m. on Monday, September the 2nd. Ed Evans of Eternity Glass Memorials, which is based at Glory Art Glass, makes unique pieces of jewellery and other memorials which incorporate the ashes of a loved one. To book a place before next Friday, call 217309. Places are limited.
The Isle of Wight NHS Trust hopes to use some of its £48 million government funding boost to help patients assess themselves at home. The Trust has not yet decided on specific projects, but wants to invest in technology such as telehealth boxes. The boxes enable patients to take health readings at home or in their place of care without going into hospital to free up NHS staff time. Readings are then sent straight to healthcare professionals for monitoring. Telehealth boxes have been successfully trialled in 14 Isle of Wight care homes, and the funding will help roll them out further. Brian Martin, who is in charge of technology-enabled care at the Trust, said, "As a Trust, we are committed to embedding technology in our service delivery to support transformation of services to ensure we can effectively and efficiently meet the needs of the local population. The approach we have taken with technology has also shown that, through better monitoring, we can be more informed about the improvement or deterioration of the patient and work with the patient to make more accurate and timely decisions about their healthcare needs, especially when it comes to end-of-life care." MP Bob Seeley visited St Mary's Hospital this week to meet with staff and see how the £48 million would be spent. He said, "The telehealth box will be an important part of delivering improved healthcare support for islanders. It should help reduce visits to the emergency department and the mainland, enable more in-home care, improve the management of illness and support better end-of-life care." Mr Seeley said Health Secretary Matt Hancock had agreed healthcare costs on the Isle of Wight were higher because it was an island. He said, "We are the only place in the southeast to win the extra money, and I know the Trust will use the money wisely to make better use of NHS staff time and improve outcomes for patients."
Dementia ward closed due to staff shortages. The Shackleton ward for dementia patients at St Mary's Hospital has closed due to lack of staff, just 6 weeks after reopening following a £200,000 refurbishment. The Isle of Wight National Health Service Trust took the decision to temporarily close Shackleton to new admissions because it was struggling to staff the specialist ward. 3 patients were being treated in the ward when it was closed. 2 have since been discharged to island nursing homes, and 1 was transferred to another ward in the hospital. Shackleton, which can treat a maximum of 4 patients when open, is now empty again. The ward's reliance on agency staff, who made up as many as half of its staff at times, was viewed as unsustainable. Agency staff are more expensive to recruit and do not always know the ward as well. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight National Health Trust said, "The safety of the people that we look after is our top priority. Despite concerted efforts to recruit, it is proving extremely challenging to permanently recruit the right number of suitably experienced staff to join the team working on Shackleton Ward. To make sure that we can safely look after our patients, we have temporarily closed the ward to new admissions. Shackleton Ward was previously rated inadequate and deemed unfit for purpose by CQC inspectors and closed in April for 12 weeks. Inspectors found patients were unable to use the toilet without asking, and the rooms were bare and unwelcoming. During the refurbishment, patients requiring specialist inpatient dementia care who could not be safely looked after on a registered hospital ward at St Mary's were transferred elsewhere in Hampshire. Following a £200,000 refurbishment, Shackleton reopened in June. The Trust said the latest closure was their own decision, but the CQC has been informed. A follow-up CQC inspection at St Mary's Hospital was carried out in March, and the results are expected in September.
Call for Mickey's Law. MP Bob Seeley has stepped in to help a mum whose disabled son lost his £3,000 life savings on a free online game. As previously reported, Susie Breer's 22-year-old son Michael has cerebral palsy, complex epilepsy, autism, learning difficulties, and has the cognitive ability of a 7-year-old child. He played a game called Hidden Artifacts and did not realise he was being charged. Mr. Seeley has written to Digital Culture, Media and Sports Secretary Nicky Morgan, calling for a Mickey's Law to regulate gaming, and to the Chief Executive of the company responsible for Hidden Artifacts to try to obtain a refund for Michael. Some internet firms appear to take advantage of vulnerable people, he said.
Brexit Party unveils general election candidate for the island. The Brexit Party has unveiled its new parliamentary candidate for the Isle of Wight. Peter Wiltshire, a businessman originally from Bedford who has a second home in Sandown, will stand against Conservative MP Bob Seeley should the government call a general election. Mr. Wiltshire said, "I really chose the island because I am passionate about it, and I see my future here. I'm married to a New Zealander and we have 3 children. I'm not a career politician, but a businessman who believes in delivering results. 62% of this island voted for Brexit. I'm appalled by the politicians' failure to deliver what the majority of our community and our nation voted for." Mr. Wiltshire stood for the Brexit Party in the European Parliament elections earlier this year in the South East region. He owns a payment system software company that deals with banks in Europe. When asked if he supported a fixed link, which was in the news last week after Labour's Lord Adonis said a bridge or tunnel was needed to save the island, Mr. Wiltshire said, "At the moment, I'd rather stay right out of the fixed link debate. I know there's some very strong opinions on it, and I do think collectively connectivity to the island is an issue, but it is just about overpricing. Or is a fixed link really something that everyone is wishing for? I want to meet as many people as I can to find out what the issues are."
£1 million funding for Respite Centre. A respite centre for adults with learning difficulties, which was repeatedly threatened with closure, has now received a glowing review and a £1 million funding boost. Westminster House in Newport, which is run by the Isle of Wight Council, was rated as requires improvement following a 2016 inspection and was twice saved from closure following campaigns from those who used the service in 2012 and 2016. But it was rated good in all areas after its latest CQC inspection and has since been allocated £997,000 by the Council to further improve its service. The centre provides short-term respite for adults aged 18 to 65 with learning disabilities or autism. Care can be provided for up to 10 individuals at the centre, but it usually only supports a maximum of 4 people at a time. Dr. Carol Tozer, the Council's Director of Adult Social Care, said, "Westminster House delivers a highly valued respite care resource for people with learning disabilities and their families. Over the past 2 years, we have implemented a major transformation programme across all of the learning disabilities homes we run in the Council. I am delighted CQC has rated Westminster as good in all respects because this is a testament to the hard work, commitment and skill of everyone who works there and to the positive impact of the change programme we have adhered to. I congratulate each and every one of my colleagues who work at Westminster House, who are justifiably proud of the service they deliver." Councillor Claire Mosdell, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health, said, "I have repeatedly stated that my ambition is for the island's adult social services to become a national exemplar, so I am delighted to read CQC rates highly the quality of care and support provided at Westminster House. We want the services run directly by Adult Social Care, of which Westminster House is one, to be at the front of our exemplar ambitions, and that is why I am also very pleased to announce we have allocated £997,000 to further improve the quality of the environment at Westminster House and provide people using the service with improved facilities. Staff were praised as kind and caring and for being competent, knowledgeable and skilled in their roles."
Sisters Walk for Summer. A mum battled the weekend's torrential rain and wind to walk around the island in memory of her daughter, who died aged 3 after battling a rare and aggressive cancer. While most islanders were sheltering from the summer downpours, Kaylee Smith, 36, from Carisbrooke, and her sister Kim Cook, 37, from Newport, walked 70 miles over 3 days and raised £2,360 for charity. Kaylee's daughter, Summer Tiffin, died in December 2008 after a 2-year battle with a rare form of cancer, and I won't even begin to attempt the name of that cancer. In her memory, Kaylee decided to take on the walk for the Joe Ellis Trust, a charity set up in memory of another island child, Joe Ellis, who lost his battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2014. Kaylee said, "It was the hardest challenge we have ever experienced, and the weather did not help. We started at Rue Street in Gurnard and made our way along to Yarmouth, which was a lovely walk. However, when we hit Freshwater Bay, that was when the weather really challenged us. The gales and rain across the military road made our walk extremely difficult, and we fell on numerous occasions. The pair set off last Friday and walked anti-clockwise round the island, even climbing rocks at one point when speeds reached up to 70 miles an hour. She reached their destination, Summer's Grave in East Cowes, on Sunday. Kaylee said, "Day 3 was the biggest challenge. We were so aching, every muscle in our bodies hurt. By the time we got to Whippingham, I physically could not take another step. My foot was swollen from my fall the previous day and was immensely painful. My husband had to bring my son's scooter out for me to do the last leg into cows. We placed our flag of summer next to her grave and couldn't believe that what we had achieved. It was such an amazing experience, but one of our most hardest challenges of our lives. I then had headed to A&E as I had torn a ligament in my foot on day 1, so I spent the next few days resting. Kaylee thanked the Ocean Deck in Sandown, who provided them with a free meal on their journey. Sunshine Bags, who made them survival bags, and everyone who donated or helped in any way.
A 19-year-old Cowes Week crewman's legs were crushed in a two-boat collision. The Cowes RNLI lifeboat was launched at 11:42 a.m. on Sunday after the alarm was raised by his fellow crew members. A lifeboat spokesman said the teenager was one of 4 men aboard a 25-foot yacht in collision with another yacht while his legs were dangling over the side. The incident occurred near the Ryde Middle Buoy in the eastern Solent in fresh winds, and it was believed at least one of his legs was fractured. The lifeboat, with Dr. Will King in the crew, attended to the injured man and put him into a special stretcher. The lifeboat towed the yacht to Trinity Landing, Cowes Parade, where Coast Guards and paramedics were waiting, and the injured man was taken to St Mary's Hospital.
We cannot cope with new homes. East Cowes and Whippingham are at capacity and could not cope with almost 600 new homes for the area, Isle of Wight councillors have warned. Councillors Carl Love, East Cowes, and Stephen Hendry, Whippingham and Osborne, said new housing would place pressure on infrastructure. The island plan states 274 new homes are planned for East Cowes, but Councillor Love said this figure could be as high as 594 proposed developments go through, although some have not submitted planning applications. Independent Councillor Love called it housing development policy madness to consider the developments. He said, "We will have our community voice heard and resist poor planning decisions and design concepts that have negative impacts on our town and way of life. If developers want to invest in our town, then work with our community and town councillors or keep away. The problem of meeting the local and national affordable housing shortages should not solely be concerned about the amount of profit or development or council will make from it. If profitability is the only consideration, people will be left with unmet needs, the most obvious being homelessness, shortage of community services, schools, doctors, and facilities. A government-imposed housing target calls for 641 homes to be built every year on the island between 2020 and 2035, a total of 9,615. Conservative Councillor Hendry said, East Cowes and Whippingham has had its fair share of building in recent times. We have approximately 1,700 homes being built across developments. East Cowes and Whippingham are at capacity. Our infrastructure is being pushed to its limits, and the new housing that is still being built is not being filled. A holistic view needs to be taken when it comes to planning strategy on the island to keep our unique communities preserved. It's time we said enough is enough. The Isle of Wight Council said the lack of suitable housing needed to be addressed, and concerns regarding infrastructure would be addressed as projects moved forward.
A familiar voice on the airwaves, broadcaster Justin GLaDOS, has died. Journalist and broadcaster Justin GLaDOS has died at the age of 47. Mr. GLaDOS was a presenter on Isle of Wight radio for many years and was the voice of Southampton Football Club. He grew up on the island, going to Parkland School in Ryde, then Ryde School from the age of 9. He went on to study journalism at Highbury College, Portsmouth, and graduated from there at 18. He joined the Isle of Wight radio newsroom and enjoyed his time working there. After a few years, he moved to the mainland and worked at various radio stations as newsreader. At the time of his death, he was a senior broadcast journalist at Wessex FM in Dorset, a job he loved. For 19 years, Mr. GLaDOS worked match days at his beloved Southampton FC, calling the goals scored from the tannoy room. He enjoyed the many hours he spent at St Mary's Stadium, where he was a big part of the club. He died at his home in Dorset after suffering from ill health for a number of years. Justin was the nephew of the late Maurice Barton, former leader of the Isle of Wight Council. He leaves his mother, Diane, father, Melvin, and sister, Claire.
RSPCA thanks Islanders for support after 65 dogs rescued. The RSPCA has thanked Islands for their amazing support after 65 dogs were rescued from an address in Cowes. As reported, the dogs were seized on by police on July the 30th from a van and subsequently a house at Fellows Road. They were handed over to the RSPCA. Last Friday, staff at the animal charity shared a picture of the rescued dogs on Facebook and thanked Islanders for their kindness and support. The dogs are receiving round-the-clock care and attention from staff. Some of the dogs will be available for rehoming shortly. Branch manager Suzanne Pugh said, "We wouldn't have been able to get through the last few days without the outpouring of kindness, love and generosity of people on and off the island. As soon as people heard these animals were in our care, we had local residents arriving with food, donations and even to offer up their own time. We are so grateful to the people who took time out of their busy days to come and lend a hand with these animals, even in a small way." And with that, I shall finish reading and wish you all a very good weekend, although the weather doesn't look as if it's going to be good later today. So bye-bye everybody from Imelda.
And from Linda, have a good weekend. Goodbye.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen.
Good morning, I'm Jan.
And we'll be reading the letters and features pages of the County Press for you this week, starting with a letter from Gillian Williams of Sandown, headlined Maize Amazes. I cannot be alone in noticing the island is being covered at an alarming rate by maize. I can only assume this is being grown to feed the biomass plants. This has happened nationwide, and thousands of hectares of prime arable land are disappearing under crops grown for biomass energy production. Maize production is bad for the environment. It uses a lot of pesticides and fertiliser and causes compaction in the soil, erosion and runoff, leading to pollution of our waterways and flooding. The production of it involves the release of tons of carbon dioxide. For the first time in 25 years, Germany was not producing enough grain to feed itself, as more than 800,000 acres was planted with maize for biomass. The NFU pushes the line, we can't take valuable land out of food production to help wildlife, but it seems okay to cash in on this madcap scheme, which is only viable because it is heavily subsidised. While these plants might be efficient if they are fed with waste products, it is insane to try to meet environmental targets by causing more harm to the environment and turning our beautiful island into a monoculture.
And Michael Saunders of Shalfleet asks, why is Ventnor Seafront in such a state? Ventnor is a nice place, spoiled by a seafront that has at least 3 eyesore derelict buildings. 2 of these are old grand houses in a total state of ruination and decay. The other building has 4 big shop fronts, all in a state of disrepair. Why has nothing been done about this? The same could be said about Sandown, which has a long seafront in a disgraceful state of neglect. That such a state should be allowed to continue on a popular holiday destination is hard to fathom. At the very least, it gives a very bad impression to tourists and is unpleasant for residents. Perhaps someone could advise me as to why this situation continues.
And now a letter from Andrew David of Newport, headlined, "Same people targeted." I received a postcard the other day. From a friend or relative on holiday, maybe? Actually, it was from the council. It seems that, as from next April, some vulnerable and low-income groups, such as the disabled and the unemployed, are going to have their council tax support cut for the 3rd time in 5 years, while others, such as those on pension credit, will once again be exempt from any cuts, and will still receive the full 100% support. When the vulnerable are targeted like this, why is it the same ones who are clobbered time after time, while others always seem to me to be immune from any cuts? When I was a kid, councils were run by part-time volunteers with real-world daytime jobs, not by full-time council officers on 6-figure salaries. Services were no worse, and in most cases a damn sight better than they are today, probably because the whole budget went on providing services, unlike today, where a huge chunk of it goes on simply running the council. We know for a fact shopkeepers, bus drivers, etc. can run the council perfectly well in their spare time, and provide all the essential services without receiving a penny from the budget in salary or expenses, because that's exactly how councils used to be run. Is there any reason why we can't go back to that old system, when councils were run for the benefit of those who paid for them, not for the benefit of those who work there? At least then we wouldn't have to keep taking from the vulnerable to be able to afford all the executive salaries and expenses, and we wouldn't have to keep cutting services with one hand while increasing council tax with the other. Or is that just skewed thinking?
And from Dean Francis of Northwood. Island MP Bob Seeley has made a principled stand on his objections to HS2 by resigning his role in DEFRA. Will he now join with his constituents in objecting to a local white elephant and oppose the St Mary's Roundabout project? There are surely better ways to spend money than on fixing something which is far from broken.
And now a letter from Ewan Jehu of Totland, headlined, "School Safe?" Having read Councillor Medlin's letter, I am astonished anyone can read the statement from a council spokesperson saying the council withdrew the public notice it issued on July 19th in relation to school places in the West Wight following a legal challenge, and interpret it to mean there is a judicial review or mere freezing of the process. The council withdrew the proposal when it acknowledged it lacked the legislative authority to enforce it. If the Freshwater Community Group cared for our children, it would acknowledge the Ofsted review which found small schools performed better on average than larger schools, and be working to protect all of our small schools instead of proposing a phased withdrawal from the Yarmouth school site, which would have seen the school suffer a death by 1,000 cuts. Any uncertainty is being prolonged by those who are still suggesting there is any hope of this ridiculous proposal being implemented. In reality, there is more security now for West Wight schools than there was before the success of Yarmouth's legal challenge. If Councillor Brading wishes to put forward a new proposal at the September Cabinet meeting, that proposal will need to be exposed to the same consultation process as the 2 previous proposals. By the time that process has run its course, it will be too late to be implemented during 2019-20. Parents, teachers and pupils can rest secure then, knowing all of our schools are safe for at least the next year. There are, of course, funding issues which will need addressing to secure the future of our schools. These can be tackled without school closures, by federalisation of small schools, repurposing of surplus schools estate, and by addressing the under-delivery of SEND provision, which is costing our council an estimated £329,000 annually. Councillor Midland ends with a plea for a democratic consensus to be reached. I would remind him more than 70% of respondents to the last consultation were against the proposal. He's clearly hoping to pressurise the Yarmouth school community into withdrawing the challenge, knowing unless they do and the council are allowed to proceed with their plan, the dream of a West Wight super school is unachievable.
And from Geraldine Scott of Ryde. At last, someone who really understands the problems we face on the island. Lord Adonis really hit the nail on the head with his bullet points regarding the abysmal service of our ferries and horrendous fares, the dire standard of education on the island, the lack of investment on the infrastructure, especially island line trains, plus the lack of job opportunities. When will the government address these issues? Other islands have subsidised ferries or are linked by bridges or tunnels. I feel the answer is a fixed railway link, as our roads are not really fit for masses of extra traffic. But whatever, something must be done.
And now a letter from David Asker Brown of Totland, headlined, "We don't want a link." Lord Adonis's comments on the need for a fixed link between the Isle of Wight and the mainland have been widely reported in our local media. I fear he has little understanding of local sentiment. Most Isle of Wight dwellers do so because they like living on an island. We do not have to endure the density of traffic that prevails between Worthing, Winchester and Weymouth. We do not suffer the same levels of rural crime as the mainland because removing livestock from the island is awkward. Currently, we are not easy pickings for vagabonds and ne'er-do-wells, since the ferries help to deter them. A fixed link is the last thing we want. Those who cannot tolerate the ferries are welcome to move to the mainland, where the ferries will have no influence on their lives. Instead, they can endure traffic jams, traffic noise, poorer air quality, higher crime rates and intolerance of ethnic minorities. We do not wish to see these things imported via a fixed link.
And Lord Know-it-all, says Marian Draper of Bembridge. Lord Adonis should be told to keep his nose out of other people's business. Let us not forget, it was he who instigated the white elephant, that is HS2. Too many egotists in Parliament are know-it-alls, eager to give their opinions based on very scant knowledge. So his ferry was late. Big deal. How many journeys by train, plane, coach or bus are delayed every single day on the mainland? I do not know whether it was mechanical failure or adverse weather that delayed the ferry, but things happen, and this hardly justifies declaring the ferry service is crap, in inverted commas. If we had a bridge, let him consider that in high winds it would almost certainly have to close. Furthermore, without the limiting factor of having to take a ferry, the traffic would be bound to increase greatly, and he could then be stuck in a queue of vehicles, perhaps mid-channel, going nowhere because there are limits to how many can be accommodated on Isle of Wight roads. A fixed rail link could be helpful, but since we have been unable to get any funding to update our ancient tube line, I think that would have to wait.
And on the same subject, from Dave Rose of Wootenbridge, a letter headlined, "Tunnel Not Cheap Option." Those in favour of a fixed link to the island, in the belief it would be an affordable, cheaper cross-Solent option, should read the ProLink website, which attempts to give credence to their claims of benefits to the island. This is the long, protracted road tunnel scheme rather than a new rail tunnel being proposed by Lord Adonis. The ProLink homepage spreadsheet 1, 5 and 4 detailing the toll revenue necessary to make a road tunnel viable requires 75% of all standard vehicle crossings by islanders to have purchased a £2,000 annual islander permit. This spreadsheet was generated and presented in September 2016 to recover their predicted estimate then for the infrastructure build at £1.6 billion. This then rose to £3 billion in September 2018, as the scheme became more complex, particularly on the unwelcoming proposed mainland portal sites, which are now in 2019 being rapidly developed and infilled. The reality will shortly be no available land on the crowded Gosport Peninsula for the proposed complex ProLink portals and connected road schemes. As their cost estimates nearly doubled just a year ago, any suggestions for the cost now of the £2,000 islander permit, which they assume islanders will be clamouring to buy?
And still on the same subject, plan for Peeved Pier, says Bill Moore of Gunville. I hope Lord Adonis was just letting off steam about the need for a fixed link after suffering a delay for an hour over a late-running ferry. I believe any road connection, whether bridge or tunnel, would completely change the way of life and character of this island. There are about 550 miles of single carriageway roads on the Isle of Wight, and a mile or so of dual carriageway between St Mary's Roundabout and Coppins Bridge, and we all know how freely that flows. At present there are 3 car ferries, 2 passenger catamarans and a hovercraft that serve different areas of our island. The yearly average of vehicle movements on and off are around 6,000 per day. This, of course, will increase during the summer holiday season and be lower in the winter. The Fixed Link Group claim a couple of years ago their proposed tunnel would only cost 1.2 billion. In brackets, just think of Crossrail. And would create some 13,000 vehicle movements a day at a single entry point at the coast near Whippingham. I am not opposed to a fixed rail link, although I believe a tramway connecting Portsmouth, Gosport and Ryde and converting Island Line into a tram system would be of most benefit to our community. This would allow more frequent services to Gosport, Ryde and the whole of the east side of the island, with possible extensions to serve other towns. A tunnel would not be affected by the gale force winds that battered the island over the last weekend, that delayed the ferries, and our Peeved Pier would not have to wait fuming on a pier.
And now a letter from crusty Sandown resident, whose name was supplied but withheld, headlined, "Town Needs Love." Failing to act on the speculators' destruction of Sandown is not the only sin committed by our indolent authorities. They have deliberately squeezed the life out of this once lovely resort. Absolute maximum extraction of revenue via council tax, parking charges, etc., while neglecting normal facilities which most resorts are routinely given. This shows in the lack of paint on the esplanade lampposts, railing and beach shelters, neglected Christmas decorations and bare metal poles along the front, where pretty flower boxes used to hang, strangely still on Shanklin Seafront and at Ventnor Park. There are limited lifeguard services, still lacking a motorised rescue boat, and raking the beach has gone, as have safety boys and speed limit boys. Please, County Hall, take some notice of the above points. Have a meeting on the seafront and see for yourselves what a mess we are in.
In the county press, Cowes Week Guide, and elsewhere, the floating bridge timetable states A continuous service will run from 5 a.m. August the 9th until 1:50 a.m. August 17th to 18th. It further states, normal service will resume on Sunday 18th of August 2018. Apart from 2018 being a year ago, resumption of normal service suggests it is not continuous. Also in the guide, the town's high street appears to be a complete non-entity, with other yacht-related etc. venues and the parade featured, where most vendors are from the mainland. On the parade, all but one of the around 20 free seats have been removed. The bandstand seating, views blocked, also fenced off, leaving but a few central seats by the sea wall. Objection to such seat removal was made a few years ago by the Town Council to those concerned with Cows Week events, but appears to have been forgotten. The Cows Parade is closed for 3 whole weeks in 1 week of yachting. In Queen's Road area, residents' views are obstructed by restricted use of the public highway for Sale GP, including Mornington Road car park, for 2 weeks for a 1 weekend event. The Queen's Road area was completely obliterated by pop-up signs, pop-up items, and a stand of around 270 seats at £50 each, all sold, raising questions: who benefits from this income? What recompense is there for reinstating any damage? And can Queen's Road residents claim council tax relief? That was from Mrs. Wardrop of Cows.
And moving on to the White Memories article, which this week is headlined How the World Came to Wootton, and this is by Alan Stroud. One Saturday night in September 1963, a jazz festival took place in the grounds of the Lakeside Inn at Wootton. It attracted just 200 fans, but crucially among them were teenage brothers Ray and Ronnie Folk from Totland. The event planted a seed in their minds, and as a result, they went on to produce the biggest music events that Britain has ever seen, the first Isle of Wight festivals. They started with a one-night event in God's Hill in 1968, featuring Jefferson Airplane and The Move. It attracted an audience of nearly 10,000 and made a modest profit, leading the brothers to think about putting on a larger festival the next year. But who to get? With all the confidence that comes with youth, Ronnie and Ray thought big. How about Bob Dylan? The rest is history, as they say. A few years ago, I travelled to Ray's home in Oxford with my son Tom, who recorded an interview with Ray for a radio documentary he was producing. For nearly 3 hours, Ray gave us his behind-the-scenes account of putting on the festivals, even revealing the little-known fact that he had once been an apprentice at the county press. Much of the interview remains unpublished and appears here for the first time. Bob Dylan was the big name that we toyed with for a long time, but it seemed impossible because at that time he was one of the top 3 names in the world. He'd last been seen in Britain in 1966, and then he had a motorcycle accident and disappeared for 3 years. There were some ludicrous stories about how we got him, much to my annoyance. It was nothing like people make out. We just persevered, talking to his management, and I made the phone call to his manager Bert Block, and I would chat with him almost weekly, and eventually he said, "Can you send us some information? Who else is on the bill? What's the site like?" So, literally overnight, through my printing factory which I set up after leaving the county press, we were able to print a book, and it was in the mail to him that day. We waited, and finally we got a telegram saying Dylan and the band will accept. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather. I had to sit down at that point. It was an international coup. It was a fantastic thing to happen, and I think without getting Dylan, we probably wouldn't have had much of an event in '69. We might not have had an event at all because we were struggling to make sense of it financially.
The next thing they said was, he wants to meet you in New York next week to negotiate the contract. I was 23 and hadn't been abroad before. I had no passport, nothing. The next day I got a passport photo taken, signed by local policeman P.C. Drury, then went to the passport office the next day, Friday, and flew to New York on the Tuesday. We had a 20-minute meeting with Dylan in my hotel room, which was friendly, and we talked about the event and then signed the contract. We thought in terms of 100,000 people once we got Dylan. We knew it was going to be big immediately the news broke. Our telephone lines went berserk with calls coming from literally all over the world, and we had to get more lines in. And that was it. We just got on with it. We didn't need a licence, and we had no interference at all. Part of the thing, selling it to Dylan, was that we would give him a family holiday on the island. He boarded the QE2 to come over with his wife and Jessie, their little boy. But Jessie got hit by a cabin door closing and was taken to hospital, so they didn't sail. The news came over from his management, and we suddenly felt very vulnerable that the whole thing could be off in a minute. How vulnerable can you get? We had some very tense hours waiting for confirmation that he was going to fly over in a few days, which he eventually did with just his wife. A lot of my time was spent looking after the Dylan party. There was his manager, the band, Richie Havens, a group of people from New York, and I was having to have a daily liaison with them. We had rented Foreland's farm at Bembridge for Dylan, with a swimming pool and a rehearsal barn, and then George Harrison arrived, and Lennon, and Yoko, and Ringo and his wife. I went to Foreland's every day for about 10 days beforehand, which really did take up a lot of my time and effort. I was driving back and forth like a mad thing. On one occasion I walked in, and in the drawing room George Harrison and Dylan were sat together singing the Everly Brothers song, All I Have to Do Is Dream. It was a beautiful rendition, and a tragedy it wasn't recorded. Next time, in part 2, Ray talks about looking after Dylan and how the festival came to life.
And the article also includes a bill poster from the time, which reads, "The greatest pop festival of the decade is now taking place here on the Isle of Wight, and coming to a climax with the only major world performance of Bob Dylan in 4 years. If you missed last night's show, don't miss today and tomorrow at the Isle of Wight Festival of Music. Come down to Woodside Bay immediately." And today's bill featured The Who, Moody Blues, Fat Mattress, Joe Cocker, Family, Free, Marcia Hunt and White Trash, Pretty Things, Gypsy, Battered Ornaments, Blodwyn Pig, Blonde on Blonde, Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation, the Edgar Broughton Band, and King Crimson. And tomorrow, the Sunday, Bob Dylan and the Band, Richie Havens, Tom Paxton, Pentangle, Julie Felix, Indo Jazz Fusions, Liverpool Scene, Gary Farr, and the Third Year Band. And that would have cost you a princely £1.05 on the Saturday and £2 on the Sunday.
And now we move on to My View, which is a column written by Rebecca Rancaroni. And it's entitled Chael Show was fun, but the judging was brutal. One of my oldest friends, let's call her Old Rosie, persuaded me to enter some of the classes in the Chale show a couple of weeks ago. I had form in 1977 when I was 12. Our village, Merston, held a summer show. I entered the kids' cake competition with a chocolate cake decorated with chocolate leaves my granny Charlie had showed me how to make. The curator of the show, Auntie Vera, decided my cake deserved to go in a class of its own, so I won. At Chale, I entered the novice vegetables: potatoes, runner beans, peppers, courgettes, cherry tomatoes, herbs and sweet peas, plus a container of growing flowers. A tea time chocolate treat using chocolate, and a cold tea loaf using recipe supplied. My tomatoes refused to play ball. On the morning of the show, I had one ripe one. 3 days prior to the show, gale force winds blew down my runner bean wigwams and most of my sweet peas. My herbs had taken a hit and also looked past their best. My lovely container of growing flowers had most of the flowers blown off and the rest were a bit dead. We managed to salvage what we could, dug the potatoes out of the compost heap, harvested the courgettes, managed to find 5 sweet peas, took the container anyway. My big hope was on the cakes. Now I know it's all about taking part, but my pants would be currently aflame if I said there wasn't a little part of me that wanted to win, especially against Rosie. I decided to pull all the stops out and threw masses of white milk and dark chocolate chips on top of my brownies as soon as they came out of the oven. I then made piping bags out of baking parchment and piped lines of chocolate up and down all over. They looked amazing. My tea loaf looked pretty good too. It was great fun setting up early on Saturday morning. The huge marquee was bustling with people rushing around with vases, cake tins, handicrafts and flowers. The atmosphere was happy, yet slightly competitive in the best possible way. I saw what might have been the biggest parsnips, carrots and onions in the world, and a spaceman. It was a diverse and wonderful display. The judging was brutal. I came nowhere in 8 classes, but did get a 3rd for my container of growing flowers. Guess how many entrants there were in that last class? Clue? 3. It was the best fun. Planning, making, setting up, attending the show, being judged, and collecting my envelope of winnings. £2, thank you very much, was superb entertainment, and it was great to be and feel a part of this wonderful community event. Hats off and thanks to the organisers and volunteers. P.S. Rosie and her mother battered me this year. Next year, ladies.
Moving on to the What's On guide for this week. Starting off with news that tickets are now on sale for the 2019 Red Funnel Isle of Wight Literary Festival. Popular sessions are expected to sell out fast, with some big names appearing in a rich and varied lineup. The festival takes place at Northwood House in Cowes from October the 10th to 13th. Historian Dan Snow will speak about his book On This Day in History. Kate Adie will be in conversation with Alan Titchmarsh, discussing her career as a news correspondent. 30 years on from her report on the Chinese government's attack at Tiananmen Square. Sir Tim Waterston will talk about his candid memoir, The Face Pressed Against a Window. Tristram Hunt will discuss how the industry continues to define the Victoria and Albert Museum. Alexander McCall-Smith will provide insights into the No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency and introduce the Department of Sensitive Crimes. Politician Jack Straw will talk about his book The English Job, Understanding Why Iran Distrusts Britain. Sir Michael Morpurgo, best-selling children's author, will talk about his new release, Boy Giant, Son of Gulliver. The historian A.N. Wilson will provide insights from Prince Albert, the man who saved the monarchy. Journalist and novelist Tom Bradby, who presents News at 10, will discuss his latest political thriller, Secret Service. And the journalist and satirist Craig Brown will present the One Stop Literary Festival, with parodies of authors. The 8th annual festival will welcome more than 60 speakers. To book, call 078 21 123 661.
The West Wight Arts Association's season of concerts starts soon, with renowned pianists Matthew Stanley and Berendina Cook, putting the association's Steinway through its paces programme of piano duet music. The concert on September the 14th will include works by Schubert, Saint-Saëns and Bernstein, ending with Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, arranged by Levine. The Castalian String Quartet returns on October the 12th with works by Schumann, Penderecki and the Clarinet Quintet by Brahms. On November the 9th, it is recorder player Tabia Debut with Alex McCartney on the lute and Jonathan Rhys on cello, with music from the 16th century to today. A Christmas concert on December the 7th will feature the A4 Brass Quartet. On January the 11th, it is viola player Tim Ridout with pianist Frank Dupre, and on February the 8th, young Sicilian pianist Giuseppe Guarira plays. Cellist Jamal Aliev and pianist James Coleman are on March the 7th, and the season ends with violinist Charlie Lovell-Jones and pianist David Palmer on April the 4th. All concerts are at the Memorial Hall Freshwater at 7 p.m. Tickets are available. Ring 756028.
And coming up at the Shanklin Theatre, the Island Savoyards present Sister Act, the musical. That's on between August the 23rd to the 26th at 7:30 p.m, with a matinee performance on August the 25th at 2:30 p.m. Tickets cost £17 for adults, £14 for children, and to book tickets for that you can call the box office on 01983 868 000, or you can book online at www.shanklintheatre.com.
Singer Louise Parker made a welcome return to Newport Jazz Club. Heavy mainland traffic meant a missed ferry and delayed arrival at the Apollo Theatre, Newport, but her trio of Matt Carter on piano, Joe Leese on bass, and John Wills on drums held the musical fort with an impromptu instrumental set, opening with a splendid rendition of On Green Dolphin Street. The next concert takes place at the Apollo on Sunday, featuring the Cornish Armada Jazz Band. The show starts at 3 p.m. Tickets are available from Jerry Cullis on 730601 or Bill Wills on 523879.
And coming up at the Key Arts Centre in Newport, we have a screening of Kes, featuring one of its actors, and a Q&A session. The star of the iconic 1969 British film Kes is making a rare public appearance outside Yorkshire to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the film's release. Actor David "Di" Bradley became familiar to a generation of filmgoers as the troubled Yorkshire boy Billy Casper, whose relationship with a wild kestrel formed the basis of the multi-award-winning movie. 50 years on, he's attending a special screening of the film at Newport's Key Arts to meet fans and share insights about Kes, the influential film that became identified with the 15-year-old lead actor. The film was the second by director Ken Loach, and it cemented his reputation as a filmmaker willing to tackle social injustice and class inequality. Di won a BAFTA award for his role in Kes, which is ranked 7th in the British Film Institute's top 10 British films, and holds a score of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. The event will be Di's only public appearance this year outside of the north of England. The impact of Kes and the work of Ken Loach is hard to overestimate. As well as providing an insightful social commentary on Yorkshire in the 1960s, this groundbreaking film has relevance today. So that's An Evening with Di Bradley, and that's on Friday, August the 30th at 8 p.m.
And the island's very own comic convention is coming to Cowes, boasting an array of celebrity guests and exhibitors. Big names such as Colin Baker, who played the 6th Doctor Who, and Josh Herdman, who played Gregory Goyle in the Harry Potter films, will be descending on Cowes Enterprise College next weekend, Saturday, August the 24th and Sunday, August the 25th, for Fan TC Con. TV actor Christopher Ryan, who has appeared in Doctor Who and many other programmes, is also in the lineup. Also attending will be the 501st Isle of Wight Star Wars Stormtrooper Garrison as part of the Festival of Cosplay. Fan TC Con also boasts stalls from a variety of local businesses such as Comic Coffee and Island Cake Studio, as well as panels and live podcasts.
And now some sports news. I'm starting off with an article headlined "Oliver crowned national champ." Schoolboy Oliver Evans has been crowned national champion after winning the 29er Sailing Championships. Oliver, who's 16, sailed to victory with Torquay crew member Finn Armstrong, despite it being the first time the pair had ever sailed together. The changeable weather at the National Championships venue in Pwllheli in Wales meant the pair faced some challenging sailing conditions, with racing suspended on 2 of the days, the first due to an absence of wind and the second because there was too much of it. Commenting on the race, Oliver said, "Although it was the first time Finn and I had ever sailed together, we worked well as a team and secured some outstanding results, meaning we went into the final day of racing with a 20-point lead. We were obviously thrilled to win the title, as neither of us were expecting it, and it puts us in a good position as we look ahead to the European Championships next week in Lake Garda." Oliver, who attends Cowes Enterprise College, will be back sailing with his regular partner Will Jarman at the Europeans, but hopes his recent success at the Nationals will give the pair a boost as they continue with their racing season. Oliver is a member of Gurnard Sailing Club and helps to coach some of the older cadets, sharing his racing expertise.
Isle of Wight Cricket Board coach Andy Woodward, together with his talented young team, have won the ECB David English Bunbury Festival winning Region Cup 2019. "The lads won it, not me," said Andy. "It's the players that do the graft, we just try to guide them. The ECB Festival attracts the best U15 cricketers in the country and is very much the starting step for potential English cricketers, with Island prospect Zeph Wells featuring in the team last year. Ollie Morgan from Ryde Cricket Club and Devon Pellard from Ventnor Cricket Club were both put forward this year, and with 5 Islanders set to be put forward for the process next year, the future looks bright for Island cricket. 6 years ago, we didn't have any that we thought weren't good enough, said Andy. Next year, we already have 5. Just to be put forward is a massive pat on the back, and it really shows the development on the island. It's a privilege to do what I do, but I'm a paid coach doing my job. It's the players and the volunteers that deserve the credit. It takes a massive amount of heart from the kids and the volunteers that put in so many hours just for the love of it. It's also thanks to the phenomenal advocates of the sport, the like of Phil Mew, who has done an unbelievable job putting together a board of directors who are so invested and supportive of the programme. Isle of Wight Performance Cricket is in a really good place right now, with a real focus on developing young cricketers.
And now an article headline: Shop owner Anne joins Team GB. Island cyclist Anne Lowe will be heading to Poland next month to represent Team GB. Anne, who bought the shop Gibbs and Gurnell in 2007, achieved qualification by competing in the 68-mile Tour of Cambridge road race in June. I've always enjoyed cycling, but I only took it up seriously quite recently, said Anne. I spent many years working as a locum pharmacist so that I could be free to travel. I did some sailing, climbing, mountaineering and a bit of mountain biking, but mostly my passion was whitewater kayaking, which took me to Australia, Nepal, South America and the Alps. Mountain biking was always an option when the rivers weren't up, and I always knew I was quite good at cycling, but only really saw it as a bit of fun on days off from other activities. The day Anne moved into her new shop in Ryde, the Isle of Wight randonnée went right past her front door, and Anne told herself, I'm going to do that next year. An inspired Anne bought a road bike from the bike shed and began riding in their weekly club rides. 2 years later, Anne started participating in a few organised sportive rides, and in 2017 completed the Prudential Ride London 100. That was when I realised I had the bug, said Anne. I started pushing myself more and more to try and improve my times. After completing Ride London again in 2018 and signing up with Team Spy, racing on the mainland this spring, Anne got her selection. The finals for the Grand Fondo World Championship will take place in Poznan in Poland on September the 1st. The event will see more than 4,000 riders from more than 40 countries compete. As well as her national commitments, Anne will also be taking part in Land's End to John O'Groats Ride, alongside as many as 800 riders. Set to travel a staggering 990 miles over 9 days, Anne has chosen Macmillan as her charity and is hoping to raise £2,000. And that's all we have time for this week, so it's goodbye from me, Stephen.
And goodbye from Jan.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, the blind man whose yen for a pizza could go all the way to the US Supreme Court and calls into question some of the basic assumptions underpinning disability anti-discrimination law. Guillermo Robles took the pizza company Domino's to court because he claimed he was unable to access their website and app to order his meal of choice using the software that reads the screen aloud to him. He also claimed he was unable to take advantage of their discounts and build his own pizza. But Domino's argues that the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, predates the introduction of websites. It was passed in 1990. And that, in any case, making its website accessible would place an undue burden on the company. Guillermo lost his case, then won on appeal in a federal court. But now Domino's Pizza says that because lower courts can't agree on the online responsibilities of companies, the US Supreme Court must step in with some clear rules. So just how significant is this case, not just in the States, but here too? Ephrat Livni is an attorney and journalist who's been writing about it. I asked her what she thought were the main issues.
I think the fundamental issue is whether or not online spaces can be the equivalent of physical places. Because the ADA was written with only physical locations in mind, there is a fair argument that the accessibility demanded in the ADA doesn't apply to the internet. But if you're realistic about the world we live in, it seems facetious to argue that online space isn't real space, because obviously the difference between the web and real life is increasingly getting difficult to see. Like, there's almost no difference. We interact online and in real life, and the two affect each other.
But surely, even if that were the case and it was decided that it did have to be a physical location, Domino's has shops and restaurants, so therefore wouldn't they still be considered a public place with responsibilities to be accessible?
So that's exactly what the appeals court found. But what's interesting is that there are different appellate circuits in the country that have found that all online spaces are equivalent to physical places. And there are those that have said it just simply doesn't apply. And in the case of Domino's, it was because they also had physical locations that they were then responsible equally online and on the app. And so it just means that then they are supposedly being punished for the fact of having physical locations. But if they existed purely on the internet, they wouldn't have to be accessible, which doesn't totally make sense as a decision.
I mean, how much are they saying it would cost them to change this?
In their petition to the Supreme Court, they did not say specifically what it would cost them. They cited one supermarket chain that I believe said something like $250,000 to update its site. Then there's also the issue of ongoing costs. I mean, one thing that is interesting is that unlike physical places, the web is constantly changing. So it's not like you build a wheelchair ramp, you're done. You've met the requirements of the ADA. This would be a whole continual process. Now, whether or not that's a fair way to view it, or if that does that matter, is a different question.
They're a big company though, they're quite rich. Their most recent annual profits were over £60 million for the year.
Is that a question?
Yeah, that's a question.
Look, I have no doubt that Domino's can afford to make the necessary changes. I think an argument that often works in the States is that there's a possibility, and I don't know if this is actually true, but there's a possibility that this would sort of chill business, right? Because it would deter people from creating new businesses online, theoretically, and it would drive businesses that already exist online to either limit their services or stop being online altogether. So that is maybe the most compelling argument in terms of the American mindset, which is, would having these requirements ultimately chill business online?
Businesses have come out to support Domino's, like I think the Chamber of Commerce, the Restaurant Law Centre, the National Retail Federation. They've all submitted friend of the court briefs in support of the pizza company. Is there actually an appetite now among businesses to support disability anti-discrimination legislation?
It's a pretty tricky position to take. It's kind of bad for business to be anti-disability, right? I mean, it's not a really good look for them. And I do sense in the petition that they're simultaneously casting doubt on the sincerity of the plaintiff and like his actual need. And at the same time, trying to seem like we are only asking the court to answer our question because businesses and the disabled will benefit from clarity. And that clarity should come from the court in terms of saying who now decides what the standards are and what happens next. Nobody can really argue we don't care about the disabled.
Well, listening to that in Maryland, Baltimore, is Chris Danielson from the National Federation of the Blind, which has fought and won a number of discrimination cases against company websites. Chris, why do you think this is happening right now?
Well, I think Domino's doesn't like the fact that it lost in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and so that's one reason that it's appealing. I think the other reason is that there has been an uptick in lawsuits that are claiming that websites are inaccessible. We can debate the reasons for that.
Chris, let's debate it. Why do you think it's gone up?
Well, we think it's gone up in part because there are so many websites. I think I read one estimate that says something like 380 websites go online every hour. Look, we all do business online, as Efrat pointed out, and there are tons of websites to do everything that you need to do, and blind people and people with disabilities need to do all of the same things that other people need to do. And when we can't access websites, really the only way that the ADA allows us to bring that to a company's attention, if they won't listen to a letter or a phone call, is to bring a lawsuit. So that's part of the reason. There are also some lawyers and plaintiffs who are behaving irresponsibly, and what they're doing is filing a bunch of lawsuits at one time against a category of business. So, for example, they'll take an alphabetical listing of art galleries and they'll just file a lawsuit against each of them. And that's unethical and it's unhelpful, because what happens is the business very quickly settles the lawsuit for money. And so even if there were legitimate accessibility issues, they don't get resolved. Basically what happens is the companies pay the plaintiff to go away.
Doesn't that rather justify the fact that there has got to be clarity about it?
Well, we would argue there is clarity. If you believe in the 21st century as a business that your website can be a place where you can freely discriminate against people with disabilities, then you're just not thinking realistically, as Efrat pointed out. Accessibility is not a mystery. Most people agree that the web content accessibility guidelines that are put out by the World Wide Web Consortium are a pretty good set of standards to follow for web accessibility. There are some other guidelines. For example, Apple and Android both have guidelines for their apps, because apps are in some ways different from websites, but those are out there too. And so I don't really buy this argument that website accessibility and app accessibility are this big mystery that we don't understand. We don't really know how to do this.
But in this particular case, there were other ways for Guillermo Robles to order his pizza. He could have called them, for instance. Do you not have some sympathy with Domino's over that?
Well, no, and here's why I don't. I mean, I don't know what the situation is in the Domino's case in particular, but I will tell you this. The common experience of people with disabilities is that when we call a phone number for a service like that, we say, okay, I'd like to order this pizza, and I'd like to get this deal that you have where, I get 10% off the pizza if I use this promo code. And we're told, okay, well, that deal only applies online, and since you're calling us, we can't give you that deal. Sometimes blind people are charged a convenience fee for accessing a phone line rather than using the website. And, of course, we all know that when we call phone lines now, we are routinely told while we're on hold, you could get what you're after faster if you would just use our website. So, I mean, I have very little sympathy when companies claim, oh, well, we allow other ways to do this, so really the fact that you can't access our website is not a problem.
Are you therefore worried that opinion perhaps is hardening on these issues and that maybe they're being taken less seriously by business?
Business hasn't taken this seriously for a long time, or a lot of business hasn't, and that's why they're in the situation they're in. Because a lot of times when they talk about cost, what they're really talking about is cost of retrofitting the website to make it accessible. That wouldn't be a cost they'd have to concur if they had built the website to be accessible in the first place. And also put in place policies and procedures, because we do recognize that websites change, but if you have policies and procedures and if you have accountability within your organization, then you can check for accessibility as you're building out new features and as you're changing things so that you don't roll out inaccessible content.
In 2010, the United States Department of Justice said it would look at some rules. 7 years later, it dropped it. Shouldn't there be definitive rules? And isn't there an argument that going to the Supreme Court might be a good thing? Get it sorted.
Well, what's funny is that when the Justice Department was proposing rules, a lot of businesses were complaining about that and saying, oh, don't regulate the Internet. Gosh, if you issue a set of rules, then you're freezing the Internet at a moment in time. And as technology changes, those rules won't apply anymore, and we won't be able to continue to innovate in the Internet space. Now, what the Justice Department has done, de facto, is said, okay, we're not going to set a standard, and that theoretically gives businesses a lot of flexibility in how they're going to meet accessibility requirements and leaves them free to innovate.
Let me just go back to Ephrat Livni to ask you what happens next. You know, what happens if the Supreme Court doesn't take the case, for example?
Oh, so there's a chance that the court would decline to take the case. I mean, they take very few petitions for review. So there's a chance that actually nothing in particular happens. But because it's a big deal for business, I do think that this is an intriguing case from the court's perspective, and there is a chance that they will accept it.
So do you have any sympathy with Domino's in this case?
I do, to the extent that I understand that businesses struggle with this. Like, I know that the website that I write for, Quartz, like, we do discuss like how to describe a photograph so that it's understandable via a screen reader, you know. So I know that it's a concern, and I know that people worry about how to do it. So to the extent that they are genuinely concerned about doing the right thing, I guess I'm sympathetic. I think their position is very difficult to be sympathetic with, though. And also given, like you said, I mean, they do have a lot of money. To the extent that it would affect businesses that have less money, maybe that's fair.
If I could just add to that briefly, Peter, they're only being asked to alter, as I understand it, this custom pizza ordering and maybe this pizza tracking thing. They've probably, I mean, I'm speculating here, but they've probably already spent more in attorney's fees than they would actually need to spend to fix what they were asked to fix.
Although, if I may say, the technical, like the details of what Domino's has done in this case, that is less important. It's the question of what then does the ADA mean on the internet, and how do businesses comply with it in full? So yeah, Domino's could probably make a fix pretty quick, pretty cheap, and be done with it. But the questions presented by the case are widely relevant, far beyond this one custom order pizza.
Lawyer and writer Ephrat Livni, and you also heard Chris Danielson from the US National Federation of the Blind. So could that happen here? Well, that's the question I put to solicitor Sean Humber. He works for the firm Lee Day, which specialises in disability and human rights issues.
We've had the Equality Act since 2010. Before that, the Disability Discrimination Act. And these say you can't discriminate in relation to the provision of services. You are required to make reasonable adjustments.
But people here are still complaining about websites being inaccessible. So how successful has our law been in defining what a website should do?
I think the law is there, and protects people. And I think it's not that there aren't problems. I think it's the general difficulty in people bringing legal cases. It's actually very difficult to bring a discrimination case, because even if you have nice lawyers willing to act for you on a no-win, no-fee, there's always the issue of being exposed to the other side's costs if you're unsuccessful. And the government knows that, and I would say very cynically allows that to persist to stop people bringing cases. So the law is there, the problem is there, but it's actually very difficult to bring legal cases.
So those words, reasonable accommodation, which says you must provide an equivalent service, does that still provide British companies with a bit of a get-out?
I think these issues need to be tested in the courts, to be honest, and in any individual case the court will look at what a reasonable adjustment means. I think in cases of these large organisations with deep pockets and whose activities are increasingly driven through the internet, I don't think it will be possible for them to argue, well, there's another way of doing it that may be more difficult and provides a kind of a lesser standard. So I think they're not going to get much change from the courts in trying to get out of making their websites accessible. My particular plea would be for the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, who are the enforcement body, if you like, to make sure that disability rights are enforced, bring their own action. They have the right to do that, and they bring their own action when large organisations have totally unsatisfactory websites and are doing nothing about it. They can investigate, they can serve notices, and if the organisation still doesn't comply, then they can go to court and take action against them, and the organisation can then face fines. I think ultimately Domino's will lose this action, and I think it will be clear that actually service provision includes internet services. But I think the important point to remember is that then what needs to happen is the court needs to look at the requirements on these organisations to provide these services, and then if they want to raise issues about, well, do you know what, we can't and whatever, then that can be scrutinised, and there is an obligation to make reasonable adjustments. And frankly, all too often organisations just don't look at this, and then right at the end they go, oh, it's all too difficult. But it's absolutely clear that, one, it's not all too difficult, but they've never even looked at it.
Sean Humber, your views and website experiences, please. We'd also like to hear from you about a couple of programmes we're planning. We're going to be talking to a range of visually impaired people about the times when they feel their control over a situation is lost just because they can't see properly. You can call our direct line with your message. Please leave a phone number or email address if you want us to get back to you on 0161 836 1338. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk or go to our website. That's bbc.co.uk/in touch. That's it from me, Peter White, producer Lee Kumatat and the team. Goodbye.
This is the scaffolding news for Friday the 16th of August 2019, and the list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding, hoarding, also details of skips, cranes and cherry pickers. We are unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. And first of all, the Cows area. We have current scaffolding in Cameo's Bath Road, Cows, pending scaffolding 43 Sunhill, Cows. Current skips are at 38 Moor Green Road, Cows, and 5 Bayview Road, Gurnard.
And now for the Newport area. Current scaffolds are at Units 1, 2 and 3, 32 High Street, Newport, 117 to 118 High Street, Newport, Precision Hair, 50 St James Street, Newport, Age UK, 114A Pyle Street, Newport, and 113 Pyle Street. Pending Cherry Picker at Sheet Corner Cottage, Main Road, Chillerton.
And in the Ryde area, we have current scaffolds 35 to 6 High Street Ryde, flats 31 to 36 Marymead Close Ryde, boots 170 High Street Ryde, Greenham's Newsagent High Street Ryde, 43 Nelson Street Ride, 25 High Street Ride, Olivo Restaurant 32 to 3 Union Street Ride, Liz Earle Union Street Ride, 138 to 139 High Street Ride, and pending scaffolds are the Royal York Hotel George Street Ride, 23 St John's Road Ride, and there's a pending cherry picker at Wootton Industrial Estate, Whiteralls Road, Wootton, and current skips are at Carita, Stane Road, Seaview, 101 Prince Street Ride, and 34 Church Close, Wootton.
And the Sandown and Shanklin area. Current scaffolds are at 42 Fitzroy Street, Sandown, 23 High Street, Shanklin. There's a current cherry picker at Downsview, Sandown, and a pending cherry picker at junction of Town Lane and York Road, Sandown. Also opposite William Hall Funeral Directors, Winford Road, Newchurch. There are current hoardings at Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown, and a pending mobile crane at Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown.
And in the Ventnor area, current scaffolds are the corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor, and there's a current cherry picker at the junction of Zigzag Road and Ocean View Road, Ventnor, and current skips are 16 South Street, Ventnor.
And the West Wight area. Current scaffolds are at Hurst's, 9 School Green Road, Freshwater, Oak Cottage, Farrier's Lane, Shorewell, current skips at Grasmere, Graham Road, Yarmouth, and vehicle crossings under construction. The Meadows, Colwell Road, Freshwater, 8 Pitt Street, Ryde, Marvel Lodge, Marvel Lane, Newport, 3 Westwood Road, Ryde, opposite Bridleway, R38 Newnham Road, Ryde, 28 Queen's Road, Newport, and 13 Ashy Road, Ryde.